Hello, hello. Please have a seat. We are about to start again. The coffee break is over and our colleagues online are about to join. So I'm waiting for the signal. Hop. Bernardo, you let me know when we're good. We're good? Okay. So welcome back to On the Move 2025 Cultural Mobility Forum. We are going to resume and start again our conversation. For the second panel of the day, we are going to focus on the transition between arts education or cultural management education and the professional life. You all have in mind this dramaturgy of ours, going one step at a time. So for this second panel, we have the chance to have wonderful professionals also traveling from far away. And I will let the facilitator, moderator of this panel discussion again present the guests. But I would like to present you with Maya Sert. Maya has been a collaborator of On the Move in the past, but she's moved on to several leadership positions in France, working for cultural organizations, but also for local governments. And she recently joined the French National Association of Art Schools called ANDEA. So I'm gonna, in a second, ask Maya to join the center of the stage. But before that, I want to salute Lina Alia. Lina Alia is a young PhD student and a young and emerging professional, and she will be the rapporteur for this session. So Lina will be, listening carefully, taking notes, and tomorrow we will access her takeaways and main points. So please, Maya, join me on stage, as well as your two panelists, Adam and Jennifer. And thank you both for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So this is the second panel of this fantastic cultural mobility forum. First of all, thank you very much, On the Move, for the invitation. I rewind. I forgot to introduce myself, to self-describe myself, and I will invite Jennifer and Adam to do it. So I am Maya Ser. I am a female human being, as Pohana said. I'm in my early 40s, and I have Asian complexion, and I am behind my gray laptop because I'm kind of scared I'm going to miss some information. So please, Jennifer and Adam, can you do a short self-description?
Okay. I go first. I asked Adam if he wants to sit in the middle. He's very confirming, saying no. Okay, so I'll start. Hello, I'm Jennifer, and I'm wearing in black and also wearing my glasses. I'm wearing a necklace, handmade Prada from Luang Prabang. I'm wearing an earring, handmade Prada from Thailand, the north of Thailand, and I'm a Asian female. I'm in my 50s. I'm not going to share with you how early or how late. Yes, that's me. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Adam. I'm in my late 30s. I am a male of white complexion with glasses and dark, short hair rapidly disappearing from my head.
Thank you very much for this. So going back to the first introduction, so as Johan said, so now I work for this national network of art and design schools in France, but I used to work for On the Move, so it's a bit emotional, I must say, to be invited today. On the other side, I would say, it was 10 years ago, so it doesn't make us any younger, but let's see if I learned something along the way. And actually, what was fun, yesterday I realized that my very first trip to represent On The Move, that was in Latvia, in partnership with European Music Council. So I guess the circle is complete. So again, thank you very much, On The Move, for the invitation. And again, as presented by Johan, today I'm super excited to be joined by two incredible speakers that will present themselves directly, personally, and professionally. But just to remind you of the topic of this panel, I'm reading because I'm a bit scared I'm going to miss some words. So the title is Transitioning to the International Arts and Culture Ecosystem, Revisited Motivations and Challenges. And again, we are also very happy to have Lina Alia as our rapporteur, and she will share our key recommendations tomorrow at the end of this Cultural Mobility Forum. And like the previous panel, and no pressure on you guys, but it was a conversation, and I do hope it will be a conversation again for this panel. Of course, with Adam and Jennifer, with me on this stage, but of course with all of you, our dear audience. So please don't hesitate to ask questions, and also please do remember that I know some of you, so I may point out some people. But first, Jennifer and Adam, I will quickly introduce you your job title, but the idea is really to present your personal pathway afterwards. So Jennifer, Mekong Cultural Hub is lucky to have you as Fellowship and Training Programs Manager since 2018. And Adam, you have been working for Prague Quadrennial, PQ, for those in the know, and clearly I wasn't before, I didn't know that we could call it PQ. For 10 years, you held different job positions, and now you work as General Manager since 2023. So to start this conversation, I'd love you to share your personal journeys, which will be, I'm sure, very inspiring, as Paolo and, sorry, I forgot your name, I see you during the previous panel. So please, can you share your personal pathway?
Okay. Adam's looking at me. And so
I could start if you want to.
okay.
Up to you.
Okay, I'll start. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I'm having my notes. Just want to make sure the point I write down, make sure I say it, and make sure I don't speak too long. So everyone, I'm Jennifer, and I'm Taiwanese. I'm based in Taipei. So I'm from Taiwan, so I would like to share my journey. And as a theater practitioner for over 20 years, when I started my theater journey, and the context and the policy of Taiwan as a bigger environment actually really influence and really drive all of us want to be international. And, theater person or art people, we always understand that's very important. It's a personal willingness, we know what we want to do. But actually, my reflection is like we always be impacted by the policy, by the resources. That's one of the biggest reflection I had looking back to my journey. And so, which is fine, because actually I think we all need to have a chance to have encounter different things that's actually inviting us to understanding maybe that's my passion, maybe that's my interest. And taking as a career, as a journey, we all need to have the first mile, you need to be supported and you started, and then you decided if you want to going on. I think that's really about personal willingness. And Taiwan has the martial law. I don't know if you know it. It has been lasting for 38 years, which is the second longest one in the world. And so I was lucky in a way. I was born during the martial law, but I also witnessed the ending of the martial law. Why I mention this? Because that time, the whole Taiwan becoming suddenly very different, huge changes, people start assembling, we have a right to speak, you can forming your political party, you can have your, magazine, newspaper, that really making everything hugely change in Taiwan, and that was also the time we start to learn how to be democratic. Why I mention this? Because that time also, the government also invests a lot of infrastructure about encouraging theater people and to becoming professionalized, institutionalized, and thinking about market, really becoming professional. And so some people used to, on the stage, not on the stage, on the street to do their theater work, saying like, oh, now you are becoming part of the governance system. But people say, no, we are just becoming professional. So I really remember that kind of a conversation before. And so from the government, since systematic resources, systematic policy, I want to emphasize again because that really encouraged us to be international. So the interesting is like, because I have been through different stages, so I'm really aware about how historical change that impacts on us. And also I learn from there to pay attention always about the current situation, what's the historical context, and make us have some change, and also, make us forget about something. And my personal experience about being international, being professional, actually, I speak for myself, and we look at the Western. Like, I'm sorry, it's a really blurred definition, but it's like we look at the Western, which simply means like we thought they are well developed, they are better, so we want to join, we want to be part of them. So we train ourselves, can be also working with the Western and be good as them. And several decades pass away. I think, in a way, in theater in Taiwan, we kind of, be professional like them. So this is, again, I started with really focusing my becoming professional. And then later on, I found something wrong or something like really strange. Like we talk about international, I have a lot of experience working with different countries, so we identify ourselves. When you say you're a professional, that also means like you have to be international. But I would start wondering, international means like every country, right? But in my experience, there's a lot of area not becoming part of the international in our own context. For example, the Global South, for example, the Southeast Asia, who are our neighbor countries. And so we don't really work with them, but we say, yes, we are international. So I just want to mention again this because I think the resources, where is the resources, how the policy set up, and the influence us is a huge influence, no matter we admit or be aware of or not. They are there, the impact on us. And so I'm lucky, I always working as a full-time job in theater. My first job is at college, managing a campus theater. My boss, who used to be my professor, she asked me about, do you know why we have this theater on campus? Do you know who we are serving for? So then how you are going to, do your job, serving them? So that's it. She asked me 3 good questions, and I think, oh, okay, start with why, and thinking about who, and then I decide the how. So that really supporting me. I think all the way it becoming a lifelong, very good methodology. And because I have been invited to do some new things quite often, I don't know why. And so I always follow this, like starting with why and thinking about who are the key stakeholders. So then I start to decide the how. So I have been practiced for a long time like this. I think art and cultural work in the whole world would not be easy, no matter which good country you are best. And so I'm really thinking it's important we know the why, at least you know what you are fighting for. A lot of time, recently years, I try to ask questions, but it's more for myself, for my organization, for the work I do. I try to remind myself to revisit the vocabulary or terms or things that we thought we are really familiar with. Because in my personal experience, being professional, that also means like we really dive into a small silo. That's my personal experience. That make us forgetting to ask the question like, is it just like this? Or, there's something more. So I found it very helpful to ask this question. After 20 years working in theater and also part-time teacher on campus teaching the arts management students are really concerned about talent incubation, not in the formal education system. Instead of what if you graduated, where you can get learning, get support because you want to do better or different or more. That's my personal journey. I try to learn by myself. So 20 years later, I look at the system. Wow, the same question, the same problem, nothing changed. So I feel like, is there something go wrong? So I start to concerning about the bigger question, looking at the ecosystem. And I would say my concern really, then I understand that's my personal willingness. My concern really drive me to different people, finding different community, and then that's kind of the reason took me to Mekong Culture Hub. This job that I have been working for 8 years till now. And so because of that, I was not familiar with Southeast Asia, even now still not enough. And so I think that's really challenging and very exciting because now I do know, I don't know. So that really helped me to be always discomfortable. I really appreciate that awareness about I don't know, about the discomfortable. That made me always try to ask the question for the people I work with. It's not, I don't assume anymore that I know how to work, despite my 20 years working experience in theater. So that's my journey related to international. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Adam, would you like to present your own international career or experience?
First of all, I would really like to thank you for inviting me. It's a huge honor for me and for the PQ itself to be part of such great forum here in Riga. We really appreciate it. Thanks a lot to On the Move. My first, if I start from the beginning, my first experience with international was actually my Erasmus almost 15 years ago. When I was studying at that time, I didn't even imagine myself to do something culture related. I was studying political science, and I went on Erasmus to Maastricht in Netherlands. So that was my first experience. Otherwise, I'm based in Prague in Czech Republic, where also PQ is based since 1967. But then somehow I start to running a cafe with culture program, and from that I started studying Academy of Performing Arts in Prague, the management department there, and so that was my second more intense probably experience with international and mobility as well, because with some of the companies there which were founded at the Performing Arts Academy. We were traveling not around the world, but in some countries, mainly in Europe. So that was my first experience with international festivals, sort of. But of course, my most intense is connected to PQ, which I think I experienced from all of the points of view. My first experience with PQ was in 2011 when I was just a visitor. I think it was by coincidence when I went to the Trade Fair Palace in Prague, and there was this huge exhibition of scenography, which really excited me, and I really like it a lot. And then I somehow forgot that, because the problem with, not a problem, but the issue with PQ is we are happening every 4 years. So there are tendencies to forget that it's after 2 years you forget that there's a new edition coming sometimes. So when it starts to appear again, I saw some advertisement for the next edition, which was happening in 2015. At that time I was running that cafe, and we cooperated with PQ. We were running bars and cafes for the festival. So that was my actual working experience with PQ. At that time, I still have enough time to actually visit some of the exhibitions and performances, and I fall in love somehow with PQ. I really like that project. It has a big spot in my heart, and I decided I want to work properly for this event. So when the edition in 2019 started to open positions, I applied for production. Now I was accepted as a location manager for some of the program sections in 2019. So it was like a couple of months long experience. And then when the position of head of production for 2023 edition opened, I immediately applied. Somehow I got that job. So it was full-time job for the first time, me working for PQ. And after the 2023 edition, the position of general manager was open. So I applied. Somehow I got the job. I hope nobody will regret that. But I also realized that like in 2011 my involvement was zero, and in 2023 my involvement was really big, and now it's even bigger. But at the same time, like my ability to see what's happening in the PQ was lower and lower. So I think like I only enjoyed full capacity of PQ in 2011, and I'm afraid that in 2027, which is upcoming edition, I won't see much from the festival and exhibition itself. I hope it won't happen, but I'm afraid it will be like that. Should I talk more about like what's my current position right now?
Please do.
We have my position is general manager, something like an executive director. So my responsibilities are mainly connected to the execution of the PQ itself. So I'm not coming from artistic background. I'm not an artist. I'm production manager. So I'm dealing with the like more boring stuff, let's say, like the money-wise budget, locations, technical equipment, and stuff like that. I have a colleague, Barbora Příhodová, who is artistic director, and she's the person who is taking care of like the content, what will be part of PQ itself. So these are my responsibilities. I guess we get to how the PQ operate later on.
Yes, please
Okay.
continue. You're on a good track, so please.
Maybe because we are really huge event which runs for almost 60 years. In 2027 we will have a 60th anniversary of PQ, because first edition was in 1967, and it's really like, for me, it's an exceptional thing, because every 4 years PQ happened, no matter of political situation, pandemic, wars, and stuff like that. Of course, each edition was slightly different, especially, like, for example, the difference between 67 edition and 71 edition, because there was a huge transition of political power in Czechoslovakia back then. And again, in 87 and 91, again, the transition from the communist-run regime to the democratic system. But it also evolved as an event itself. In the past, especially in the communist times, it was more like a traditional exhibition of like how scenography, like classical scenography, is presented. And later on, beginning with the 90s, more and more, we call it live events, were starting to be part of PQ itself. And in the late tens or zeros, like from 2007, 2003, the live events starting to be really a huge part of PQ. It was not just the exhibitions, and in 2023 edition, I think it was like 50-50. 50% was the exhibitions, 50% was live events, as performances, talks, and stuff like that. We are a complicated organism. It's even for like members of our team, it takes some time. To me, it took like 6 months to fully understand how PQ works, and I was inside the team. Luckily for 2027, most of our member teams, they already organized the previous ones. But like maybe basic explanation can be like we have two types of program. One part, exhibition of countries and regions and student exhibitions, which are those two really huge exhibitions. Are curated by the countries participating in PQ. So it works like through our Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We send an official open call to the world, and each country has its responsible organization, either it's maybe Oistad Center or Ministry of Culture or Art and Theatre Institute, organize their own open calls or selection, and they are deciding which exhibition will come to the PQ. We have no rights to, we are just accepting that we have no curatorial rights about those exhibitions. They should only follow, like, of course, the theme of the current edition and some practical limitations, for example, size, the sound limits and stuff like that. But all of the content is responsibility of each participating country. The other part of PQ is curated by us, by PQ. We have international curatorial team selected by our artistic director, and each curator is responsible for its own program section. For example, in 2023 edition, we have a curator for PQ Talks who, through the open call, was selecting all the speakers who will take part in that program section. We're gonna follow that because we really like the fairness and transparency. So only way how to take part actually the PQ is through the open call. We are kind of proud of that because there are no like sideways how to get to the PQ in some shady way. For example, everything needs to go through the open call or as a representative of the country in the student exhibition or exhibition of countries and regions. That's like a really brief explanation. I guess there might be some questions which I will glad to answer that regarding this topic.
Thank you very much for this presentation, and it's promotional time, so please save the date. So on 17th June.
17th of June. Unfortunately, I can't say anything about the team or be very specific about program sections because we will have official announcement on 17th of June. It will happen in person in Prague, but we are going to stream it. So just follow our website. The link for the stream will be there, and you can watch the whole thing.
Thank you very much. And before I will bring in some common questions, and of course, again, you, dear audience, do not hesitate to ask questions. But please, Jennifer, can you please present your own organizations and maybe some flagship programs that really support the international careers of artists and cultural practitioners in your region?
Yeah. Thank you for this. When I received the invitation, we kind of feel like, are we relevant? And also because the topic mentioned about international, and so we have our small team internal discussion, and we thinking for MCH, and we actually want the people we support to be transitioning to Asia, to Southeast Asia. Why? Because that not happening for decades. And within Southeast Asia, they do not have a lot of exchange. They do not really have a chance to know each other better, work with each other, even they're so close. And people from outside may be thinking, the Southeast Asia, but actually there's a very complex region, language, a lot of things, so different. And so that's also why Mekong Cultural Hub started. We actually started we have a sister organization based in Cambodia over 35 years or more. And their mission is really to revival the society through art, because there's a huge genocide, there's a huge trauma for the whole society. And so that's their work. And they really believe in art, how the art has the power to to make the society becoming more inclusive and so on. And so they started to incubating more talent and with the interest in arts and cultural leaders, and they started to having programs supporting them to travel around to the neighbor country to support their learning. And while they are understanding this everything, there's so many things like just lack no system, no ecosystem, no infrastructure, no supports, no grants, and no policy, whatever you know the term, not existing there. And so they think, okay, that's where we are. So we need to support those people. So when they travel to the neighboring country, surprisingly, they say, oh, wow, the same. And so the realization also make them think, so like we have a shared challenging, and they also so they also be very aware. Even all the things I described is not there, but still there's a certain level of a vibrant individual and grassroots small group or collective, not registered. They really have a very strong driven force for them. They really want to do something. So they have a different job, they get money, and then they do their work. So Mekong Culture Hub, actually, we kind of based on the knowledge and the methodology from our sister organization. But when we started, because the awareness of a regional, the Mekong region particularly, the shared challenging. So when there's a chance to make this happen, actually, you just really want to respond to the gap, to the need, to the lack of the region. So that's where Mekong Culture Hub started. So because of this, the people we really want to focus to support with describing them, who are they? They are practitioners whose work at the intersection of art, culture, and society. Why? Because many of them, the art and culture is their way to make some social change that they're looking forward to have, and to realizing they have their vision of what this means, a better society. So these are the people we want to support. So we usually describing them diverse practitioner. How come becoming diverse in terms of a country, in terms of a practice, in terms of a role and the concern, the focus? And so we do have an artist. Many artists are our fellows, but not only artists, we also have a researcher, manager, promoter, and so on. They also are our fellow. So how we work, and I think basically we work with connect people to meet, to know each other, and to start their relationship, to then later on they have a network regionally. They have a network, and we expand by bringing them together, learn from each other, expand their knowledge, learning from their peer from different country, from different practice, so they can learn from each other, expand their perspective regionally, and we broker the resources, the chance, or the friendship. So that's basically how we work with them. And so our program really want to supporting them can build up networking, and they could have their learning through peer-to-peer learning. And so the program we have, for example, including training and support, and currently we have a professional exchange program, and we also respond to the need from the fellow. So their voice matter a lot. And so because we want to support them, so it's they telling us what they need by directly in conversation with them, by getting their feedback through the questionnaire, by our participation. We have an observation about what can be supporting, and then we should provide so they could do their work. And so then we also have a program related to community arts that's really relevant to them, because art and culture, in a way, is their way to engage with the community and to, like I mentioned, pushing the vision they have for the society through their artistic way and cultural ways. And also the other thing, we are now trying to facilitate a hub networking program, which is we work with grassroots organization from our target country, you're already aware of Mekong plus Taiwan. And I think that's also kind of an organic reason when we started. Taiwan also expressed very strong interest, like they want to know more about their neighbor country and through culture. So we started with 6-country focus, and then 3 years later, around many other Southeast Asian country practitioners talk to us like, how you describe, actually we also need. So it's like a lot of organically just happen this way. We have a big event. Usually our program is more like supporting training and so on, professional exchange. And then the only really big event we host is already, this year will be the 4th time. The name is a Meeting Point. And it is a bigger platform, like a conference, but not really typical conferences. For us, that's the place, and so the voice from the people we want to support, and they could express. It's a platform for them. So Meeting Point, we have several programs. Every program overlapping, it's like lasting several weeks and even 8 months around. So people can come together and learn from each other, and then Meeting Point is the place they could express. They could share their practice, their concern, their reflection, and so on. So Meeting Point itself, basically, is a practitioner focus. It's a process-oriented. That's the place practitioner, they could choosing the most comfortable way they could present. If they feel I'm very good, I'm very comfortable with presentation file, yes, go ahead. If they feel it's a more like a workshop or a conversation, it's a comfortable. So they decide what they want to talk, how they want to talk. That's the reflection we have had, the practitioner in the region. Most of the international or say regional platform, lacking their voice, there's no space for them to really share their practice. So maybe many of you don't feel you have a lot of knowledge or experience with them, simply because a lot of a platform is not designed for them. So they don't feel like it's comfortable, they could share, not mention about they were not invited. And so that's the Meeting Point. So a lot of the program I mentioned, if you're interested, I'm happy to share details, but I just want to share what is common in the program we provide. I think first, it's always a small group discussion with diverse people. I've already explained diverse. Diverse becoming very important element in our program. Why? Simply because we think diverse can be very challenging. Everyone is different, but it can be also really rich. And that means people learn, and people start to feel aware of the differences, even you are from the same region, and people start to practice how we can work together, because the value, put us together, we all concern something similar, but we are so different. So they start to really practice how they want to work together, and which means it's not method A, not method B. It means like A and B come together, they need to try to figure out something else, maybe C, so they could really work together. I think that's what we see a lot happen in our program, and we want to create safe space for them. We want to providing them plenty of time, plenty of space, and they could also make decision how exactly they want to learn from the process, what exactly they want to talk, they want to emphasize, and we embracing learning, particularly peer-to-peer. Mekong Cultural Hub now, we are 8 years old, very small organization, very small team, and my team member, our director, Frances, who used to live in Cambodia for 10 years, now back to UK because of personal reason. My another colleague, she's from Myanmar, and she's based in Yangon and Chiang Mai, probably you can guess the reason. And so I based in Taipei, so we actually, from the very beginning, we work just like remotely. So when COVID happened, we don't feel like too panic. We just feel like, let's try online. So everyone say, no way, art and culture, how come you can do like no in person? But the interesting is like, I think the good learning from the process, from the COVID time, is now like most of our program is still stay hybrid. A lot of online time. Why? Allowing people just come back, talk, get deeper understanding, have a more digest space, because they can come back. And then they know at a certain point they will meet in person. So when they meet, actually, it's really, everyone is so excited about this because we have talked online for 8 months. Finally, we meet in person. And that's most of the time is where meeting point allow them to come, meet in person. And so we really want to play more role about advocate or share how art can play a key role for the society, for the development, for a more democratic, inclusive society possible. And so we also want to really share and advocate on the people we work with, hoping people have a more interest in them, meeting them, talking to them, understanding they have their own ways of practice, which may be not necessary or not ready or maybe not necessary, becoming so-called like a one standard international, because it's really local context really drive them how they could try to work. So we do not have a budget to just giving grant for their project. Everyone say this is important, right? Correct, we all need budget. However, in our program, we never really giving grant for people to do things, but we still have a lot of fellow want to join. So why? I guess many practitioners at WeFocus, they really in a very fragile status because of financial unstable, because where they are based, where they are coming from, there's no supporting system. It almost like a no there, so they do not have any safe net. And I think financial unstable also make them extremely pressure and fragile. So I think why they feel so fragile, no systematic support, financially lack, no community, and the lack of be understood, lack of be support, and that make them really becoming more short-term driven way to do the project. Every day is struggling for finding resource, make them lack of access to get some advice, to get some guidance. They do not have access to their peer. And so I think what they really need is they could have a longer term thinking about their career, they can find resources. And recently, the very important reflection we found, the people we support, what they need, actually, surprisingly, is not something big, it's not money. They say we need a community. And so you can hear from the behind meaning, like when people say like, I really need a community, which just means like they don't feel they have a community. They don't feel they have a peers in their country, in their city. They're feeling very, very alone. It's a really small arts community in the region, in several countries, most of them, not all of them. And so they also want to know where they can find their peers. Yeah, so that's how we provide them. And so when we say peers, again, it's diverse. They're from different countries, different practice. They are not looking for the same practice, so they learn from each other. It's even beyond that. So the interesting is like, because they are not getting money, but they still really want to come and really embrace the network MCH try to build up for them. I think in this relationship, actually, they develop more possibility of different resources, of a new knowledge, and they can contribute to others. They can also be contributed, be supported, peer to peer. So the willingness of collaboration is so real, so strong. It's not because resources are standing by, let's try to collaborate because, we are eligible. It's nothing there for them. So when they really want to collaborate, surprisingly, we found out they try to figure out a different model. Because you got money, I have no money, I got some knowledge, we can work together. We find Adam to find something else to support us. So it's like a very unique model. They just really stay together and figure out how we can do something together. Something happened 2 years later, 3 years later. Some people always talking about how to collaborate. They stay as a friend. So that's how I see when people really want to collaborate, and the driven force is really strong. Yeah, so that's some kind of a small reflection we found, why they want to come to us, why they need this, and why they still keep a really strong connection.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'd like maybe to go back on this, the fact that what is the most important, according to your experience, is the fact to have this community. Maybe, Adam, you could share in your own experience, is it very similar at PQ or in your other international experience? Is it something that you've seen?
I would like to say that I really admire what you do and how you are doing it. It's really inspirational. And I like that you mentioned community, because it's extremely important for us as PQ as well. I hope that we have large community who every 4 years are looking forward to come to PQ again. And because we have like 10,000 professionals coming every 4 years. And that's something we want to focus more on, because we are lucky that previous leaderships of PQ, they established those main pillars of the PQ, the program sections, the exhibitions, well enough that we can build on that and focus more on the important topics which in the past were not enough time to focus on. The community is one of them. Also, maybe like reaction on the previous panel. It's a huge privilege to come to PQ, because it's really expensive, but the money is not the only issue. On previous panel, it was about project like Erasmus and similar ones, which I'm really glad that they are well established in European Union or in Europe. But there are which, like, for example, 15 years ago, I could took a part of Erasmus and travel to another country, even though I was from small Eastern European country and my family was quite poor. I still could afford it. I think right now we are in a position when this is well established, but I think we need to do a little bit more, because there are parts of the globe which are not so lucky. And they have different challenges and difficulties in the mobility, especially in the emerging artists, which is another focus for our focus for next PQ. Because there are countries where, for example, in the field of scenography, there is not established like formal education, for example. So it's much more difficult to get to a university in the European Union, for example, or there is a war in that country, or even to get issued a passport is a challenge. And I think there is a need for programs not only as like Erasmus, but to include the rest of the globe. Also for us as PQ, we have around 80 participating countries, but of course, like majority of them are coming from Europe because of convenience, because it's close, so it means it's cheaper, but also because they can't do it. But there are countries who or regions who can't participate in PQ, and it's something I think we need to do something about, because like even though for example, you apply for an open call, because our open calls are open, like everybody can take part. We are trying in the open calls of the program sections which we are curating. We are trying to support the artist as well. We don't have enough budget to fully cover, for example, for the travel cost, accommodation, fees, and stuff like that. But even though you can apply, it doesn't, and you can be selected, so it means you have to be exceptional artist. But it doesn't mean that you can come, because even though you are selected, maybe you have to go through a visa process, which for some regions, for example, for countries in African continent, it's so frustrating experience that they might just give up, and I can't blame them. And this is something I think we need to touch as well, because as I said, like Erasmus and projects like that, they're well enough established, but they're only for privileged selection of countries. I started to talk about the community, which maybe this is like a small sneak peek into next edition before the announcement. This is something with what we want to focus more and also include emerging artists. There was always some kind of like networking happening on PQ organically, but it was never like animated or established as a official part of PQ. This is something we want to change, to include industry to the Prague Quadriennale for next edition, and emerging artists and students will be one of the main focus, to connect them with professionals, to give them like floor to express themselves. Also, in the past, there was a program section dedicated to students. Now I will say something controversial, but let me finish. We're gonna cancel that because we want to include students across the board in all the program sections happening on PQ. Because, for example, on the program section of PQ Talks, there is a huge amount of students or emerging artists who have something to say, and it's important, and it's interesting, and it's important for us to hear it. So from now on, we're gonna open all the majority of the program sections to the students as well. They will be a big part of this industry program section, which we call PQ Hub, and this is something we want to do for the community, because we think the PQ community is doing a lot of work for us, so we want to give something back. So we're gonna see how it will end up, because it's something new, which was never happening on PQ, but I hope it will be great.
Thank you very much. I may have a question, but maybe you have a questions? Yes? Wait a second, please, for the mic. Thank you very much.
Hello. So my question is about artificial intelligence, and I want to say that what do you think about that, and do you think that it should be allowed in your area, or it should be taboo, and where is red lines? And I give you small examples. So in photography, to create the photography with AI, it's like that. And to make it by yourself, need to spend a huge amount of time. So some competitions, photography, not allowed it, and some allowed it, and I want to hear your point of view. Thanks.
Okay. I consider myself a little bit boomer, so I'm not very experienced with AI. Sometimes I'm, of course, using ChatGPT to help me with some texts. But I'm really curious how it will, because we're going to open our open calls this year. And actually might happen that a lot of the applications might be done by the AI. On previous editions, I think it was not the case, because AI was not that developed in 2021, 22. So right now we didn't think about that. I think because as well, like the most exhibitions and performance are 3D. They are something you bring to Prague and exhibit or perform there. So it's not only about visual art. So I think it's like for AI, I guess it's more difficult to make a performance. But I would like to give you an answer, but I'm not sure. I think this will be the first edition when the AI will like fully exhibit itself through the applications, and we will see. But right now it's allowed because we don't know how to forbid it, because we don't know. We receive an application. After we receive the application, we will see if it's done by AI or not. Maybe it will be on the level that we won't even recognize it. But right now it's allowed on PQ, I guess.
Jennifer, would you like to comment?
Okay. I'm not. Obviously, I don't look like a technology expert in AI.
Come on.
Yes, but it's interesting because most of our program are open call, so people eligible they could apply. And then this year particularly, we found a lot of application form, obviously written by ChatGPT. And so it's interesting because in our way of working with the practitioner, we really want to avoid that they need to be theatrical thinking, conceptual thinking, bigger words, theory, that's not what we're looking forward to have. We want to hear their real voice and what they really want to do, what's really strong, drive them to do. So we even try to design everything, how we work with them, just make sure they understand, you don't need to have a perfect English. It's okay, grammar, spelling, doesn't matter. Please just share why you want to do this. And so the interesting why we found out is the AI. Well, first, people kind of lazy. They don't change the format, so it's quite obviously. And then second is because they start, like practitioners, they start to talk very differently, very organized, very big words. And then till the last page, last line, we don't know what they are trying to do. They just putting a lot of big words for us. And so we realized that, how we deal with that, because in our program, we don't really have a making art program. It's really facilitate people to get connected, learn from each other. So actually, every time we have an open call and we have a very clear email to explain why we have this selection, why the result is like this, what's the criteria. And this time we particularly clearly mentioned about, we found a lot of people using AI, which is great, which is fine, but please remember they are just supporting you. And please let us to hear your real voice. That's what we are looking for. And so because there's one program, we are going to only select 6 plays, and we have almost 100 application. We were so excited, and there's so many from AI. So I do not have a clear answer, but I just share with you how we really deal with. We just encourage people using that as a tool, but you matter the most. You are the person, why you want to do, how you do it. That's how we interest. We don't interest in big words, organizer, like a perfect article. So that's small experience related to AI. Sorry, not much more.
I'm sorry because I saw Johan showing me that we are running a bit out of time. So I'd like to keep some time for some more questions with you, dear audience. But I just wanted to come back to when we prepared this. I saw you. I will give you the floor afterwards. When we prepared this conversation a month ago, and without ChatGPT, it was only online on Zoom. When we really delved into the topic, we felt the need to redefine 2 words that are part of this title of this panel, and these 2 words were international and transitioning. Maybe to close this conversation, I'd like you maybe to redo the conversation, but with this audience, like Jennifer, when we talked about international, you really emphasized the fact that international can relate to what's far, but also to what's close. So this is one point I'd like you to share your input on. And then in terms of transition, it was also related to lifelong learning, and not only to academic learning. And there was a bit my provocative question of earlier, because we mentioned opportunities for students, so already for some privileged emerging professionals. But so I wanted to see if you think about some opportunities for people outside this kind of privileged formats. So there was more to redo the conversations around these 2 words, international and transition, and then I saw you, and I will include your question. Thank you.
Maybe let me try to be short because actually I already mentioned about the question I have about international. I have no problem with international, but I'm just really want to remind myself and share with my colleagues that be aware when we really open for international, the reality is like some areas, some people, they just cannot join. So that's just face the reality. That's why I really thinking we should, pay attention, not feel too comfortable. We are so open, we are so inclusive, which is not the reality. And transitioning, because I mentioned again, I think for myself and for my organization, why is very important, even including like why Mekong Culture Hub need to exist. We even talk about, I hope very soon, we don't need to be existed, which means like, everything is there. So they don't need to go through us. So that's how we are trying to think this way. So that's why I mentioned transitioning not to international, because I already have the question about why they need to be international. Meanwhile, the people we support hasn't been grounded and not yet even regional connected. So why we pushing them say like you have to be international? So that's my kind of a response, reflection coming from. And in Mekong Cultural Hub, we don't emphasize about age, like a young or senior. And I mentioned because we really stay with the diverse because we see how that can support people. We see that young people need more chance, definitely, but actually senior ones, they have their huge, important wisdom and knowledge. So where they can transmitting, how we can transmit our on-the-ground practice, that kind of a knowledge can be transmitted to more people if they are interested to learn, to get something from there. That's something Mekong Cultural Hub and myself really interest, and we really want to figure out how we can do it. And so that's kind of a shortly respond till now. So Adam?
Thank you. Adam, then?
Yeah, we are trying to be as inclusive as possible, as well as and also as international as possible. I mentioned it before. I might mention like we are like emerging artists. We are applying for Creative Europe funding with also Polish Theatre Institute and Cyprus Theatre Organization in Portugal, which will be focused on only like emerging artists. Female emerging artist, immigrant female artist. The topic will be about speculative design, and we want to it will be about the process of residencies around Europe for this target group, and this is something we like really working on, and we hope we gonna receive that funding because the project itself is really interesting. Besides the And then I was talking about the program sections focused on emerging artists as well. I'm thinking if I forget some. Of course, the student exhibition. It's a big opportunity for emerging artists. With that, we are because in previous editions of PQ, since it's very official, the countries organize that. Sometimes happening that. Same institution is participating because the officials in that country they just look on the open call which we send them from our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They see okay previously this university, for example, participated and they directly delegate that university. We of course we can't intervene in that selection process, but we will try to maybe give them opportunity to open these open calls to other universities, or as what we would like to see the most is like collaboration of several universities in one exhibition and then receiving it at PQ.
Thank you very much. So I guess now this is time. Can we still have 5 minutes for some questions in the audience? You wanted to ask, and do we have other questions? Yes. Thank you.
So I go back to the title of this session, Transitioning to International Ecosystem, and in the title also we mentioned challenges, and because I think there are many challenges, I wanted to look at one specific and see what would your comments be on this. So to start, I just want to take a metaphor from migration studies. Once I read in a migration study that first generation migrants, they arrive, the dining table is full. So they sit on the balcony, on the floor, wherever there is a place. Second generation have their seats on the table, and then, but maybe they are not empowered enough to participate in deciding which dishes will be served. Third generation start to make decisions. So this is, I mean, from a neighboring field, not from our field exactly, but it resonates a lot with the challenge I want to speak about. This is why I start with it. If speaking about the international cultural system, I would like also to bring in the question of centralization and decentralization that we normally speak about, on national level or cultural policy level. I would like to suggest an understanding of this international system as also having centers and margins. And maybe this is my way of running away from the binarity of global north, global south, west, east, etc. Let's say there are many margins and there are different centers. Bringing people from the margins to the centers does not always or eventually mean automatic inclusion of these margins, because, and I'm sorry for the example, if a European artist is participating in a festival, they don't represent that country. But if an artist from Myanmar comes, automatically they represent that country or a specific culture or political context. So even the inclusion in terms of physical presence or voice does not mean the influence. And here comes again the whole power dynamics, inequality in the international system. And Adam, as you said, we need to go beyond Erasmus, and I do agree. And we need to go beyond inclusion in terms of representation, but how? And how can we systematically look, but on grassroots level, on the international system, to decentralize it in a way that it's really inclusive but not representative, if it makes sense.
It does. Thank you very much for that. Would you like to share your thoughts?
I definitely agree that it should go both ways. I don't have recipe for that. It's really like it's such a complex topic, decolonization, and if I would have some kind of like advice, I would love to share it. I don't right now, but we like as a PQ, we can't go both ways because we organize an event in Prague. We are trying to, of course, like me and members of our team, we are trying to travel around the world. We were in Kampala International Festival with my colleague Barbara, which is happening in Uganda. It was extremely exciting experience to see how they organize the festivals there, but that's the only thing I can say to that, because it's like really complex problem how to do it to be inclusive and not like another form of colonization or something. But that's not my field of expertise, so I wouldn't like to say something wrongly.
I think our work is try to toward the idea work can be more inclusive. It doesn't mean like we think now what we do is already make this happen. And then I think you're so right, particularly certain country, they are facing very challenging situation politically, or like some disaster happen. And for example, Myanmar, when they suffer so much, anyone from Myanmar automatically, they have to present their country, and which even I describe our diverse means like people from different country, but we do not want and we don't encourage accept that's individual choice. They don't need to representing their country, because within country is already also very complicated, particularly in Southeast Asia. In one country, there are so many different groups and different dialect, language, and so on. So it's already very complex within so-called one country. So this is something we try to consider country, just try to allocate our limited resources, hoping we can best serve the area we really want to serve. But it doesn't mean like everyone come here just representing your country. Like I'm sitting here, even like describing about the Taiwanese society. I'm not representing Taiwan. I'm just sharing, where I was coming from, like it or not like it. I was just shaped who I am now, and plus a little bit my personal idea where we should go. But that kind of a complexity situation happened in some Southeast Asia country. Some people really suffer, and some people really kind of take advantage because the whole country suffer, and people look at them and really want to try to help and offer. So that's another layer of complexity is happening now. But I really agree with what you are saying. To me, that's a similar when I even joined this panel, I still want to raise the question, like, what do we mean by international? Because I want myself not stay comfortable. Stay like not enough. I know, I'm on the way, so what? Just a little step, maybe. And it's really far away. But we really want to try to have a small step, if possible. And so that's what I really want to share with dear colleagues. That's just be discomfortable. And so we kind of aware, like, oh, hold on, we talk about inclusion. We are not. Yeah, but we try. We talk about international, but not really. So let's try. And so that's how I really want to share with you. And Mekong Culture Hub try to be responsive, try to be critical about our work. We're changing every year. We learn from our experience. And the most critical perspective is just started by looking at us. Yeah, so that's maybe just a little I can share with you. Yes, thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. So last question, I guess, or do we have more extra time?
No, we have time.
Oh,
we have time.
Sorry.
And
so,
we have questions. So you pick
perfect.
and we run with the
Okay.
mics.
So first, thank you.
So hi, I work as a culture project manager in a smart government-funded culture center in a rural parish in a Bauskas municipality in Latvia, right next to Lithuanian border. Not a lot of young people decide to do the work I do because the pay doesn't compare to what you can earn in a private field. So by statistics, it's mostly older females that do work the field. Most of them do not have fluent knowledge of English, which means that they're not too interested of the internationalization of culture, which is taking place whether they like it or not. So often this is not even a conversation, not to talk about a movement in these rural communities. The whole purpose of these culture centers is to support local communities, keep alive cultural traditions, and support local amateur art groups of different types, with a big emphasis of the local culture. But these smaller local community and culture centers often can't keep up with the way the world and society is changing, and with that also the needs and wants of the people that they work for. What is your thoughts of the place of these organizations in culture and arts internalization, and what can we do as a thing, as it is a thing that is happening, but because of lower financial means and human resources, it's hard to implement in our everyday work, thus keeping the smaller communities kind of robbed of this dialogue and this movement as a whole.
Thank you for mentioning the language. I'm sitting here. I try to speak English, but you can tell I'm not having good English. And so in our work, very interesting because every country, every Southeast Asia country have their own language. And then sadly, luckily, we need to communicate with English. So for us, we really struggle with English. We understand that's the tool. You need to communicate, get connected with other people. That's an issue we really try hard, how we can support people, even not really have enough English, but if they're interested to becoming regional, how can we support? And again, because we have our focus, so looking at the country, the area we are focusing, and we're starting to try to having some possibility to provide local language available at the same time, hoping that can reducing some barrier, but just a little bit. And I want to be very honest. So that's an issue going on. I don't really know how to solve the problem. But I guess it's again about the organization you are working with or people you are working with. Is it if it's a really like I say grassroots local, actually. Maybe just one of the person can try to see if first, of course, necessary to be regional, to be international, if need, why, what we really need to get from being international. So if you have that kind of answer, then the second thing, of course, we try to see how we can get it with the community, basically without language available so they could get connected. So that's another thing I really want us to just, be aware, and if people don't speak English, they really not able to be part of our conversation, which is sad, and I think we just need to be aware. So actually, I do not think I really have a solution for you, but in a way, for our work, we really want to support people just can work the way they want from the grassroots. But we also understand the resources. So we try to allocate some resources. So for us, we think at Mekong Culture Hub is trying to play the role in between. At the same time, we have some kind of ability to ask for more resources because we have a language, we have some kind of a knowledge or experience that we can connect it with a bigger organization, for example, international one, who have resources available for the whole country, for the whole world to apply. And so we have a little bit ability to get that. But that's the role we play. The other way is like we look at the grassroots organization, how we can support them, how we can allocate the money, the resources, and come here and share with them. That's something we just keep trying. And in our very limited experience so far, I would say why I mentioned about our sister organization, because they really do not have a local resources. They need to work with international foundation. Thank for them. And so they have the knowledge, they have the language. So we, based on that, we also using this knowledge, but we are very clear why we try to learn this knowledge, because we remember who we want to serve. I guess that's what I was listening to you saying about the boring job of arts manager. I think, you're just making, it's not interesting, but I think it's important and very excited, because we need more people becoming the bridge to connect it. We don't expect everyone can bridge with others. I think we need a lot of person, talent, and that's something actually I forgot to share. I think the younger coming arts manager, curator, or artist, some of them, they have this quality. There's a strong need. People have the skill in between. They have a different language, not English, and also other type of language. They have a skills. They are in between. They can connect people, community, with grantor, with policy maker, with grassroots practitioners. I think we need that kind of a talent. We don't assume like everyone can be, I don't know how to say it, so like Superman, Superwoman, super something. I don't think that, but I do see there's a need. I hope there's a lot of younger people want to becoming that kind of a professional person, because we need that. The world is really divided for many reasons. We need people have have the knowledge and be aware of different people, have a different context, and so on. I think that's very important talent. In my networking, I do not see enough. I think it's really strong lack of this. I'm hoping there's a more talent, becoming the bridge and can work with you. And then so can bridge resources with the grassroots organization. That's the only thing I can think of. I myself, I want to be the bridge because I love the people, their work. I'm not necessarily love the grantor, the policy maker, but I try to be with them, try to understand them, and I try to influence on them. Not successfully yet, but I'm hoping, someday we can make it happen. So that's kind of my not really answer for you. I hope you don't feel very disappointed.
No, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions, but maybe Adam, would you like also to be a bridge in this effort?
Yes, say yes.
Okay, yes, of course. The language barrier is also something we are really aware of. On PQ, let's say official language, so of course it's English, but we know it's a limitation because, for example, even like if the open call is written only in English, for some artists, it can already be a barrier. So we are trying to address that, but of course it's connected to the budget as well, because we have, for example, PQ Talks is like a 9 or 10 days long conference from the morning to the evening, and the costs to have like live interpreters for, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 languages, it's a huge amount of investment, which I'm not sure if we will be able to do, but it's something we are trying to address more and more. And with technology, I think it will be more accessible. But I'm not sure if the question was only regarding like a... Yeah.
Yeah.
In regards of the internalization of culture which is happening, what is our place? Because we do work with local communities, we have some resources, but how can we help with what is going on?
I consider PQ as a small organization because, like, we start. I think after the last edition, there was like four member teams. Not all of them even were on a full-time job. So we are small as well. At the beginning, of course, at the end, there is like including staff and volunteers and stuff like that, there's like more than 500 of us. But we start as a small organization, like as a human resources as well. Of course, we have a kind of like international recognition, so we have a say in that. But for example, our like previous Creative Europe project was focused on local activities as well. The one I was talking about before. There is a central project which is about speculative design in those residencies, but we want to have each partner its own local activity funded by the grant to focus on local issues, on local troubles connected to inclusivity as well. I don't have a recipe for you, like, because I never run like a small organization like you are talking about, but I think we are trying our best to incorporate those organizations around the world, at least in the PQ itself. Lots of exhibition, lots of like artists they are coming to PQ to present their work are coming from small organizations, for example. So we are trying to address it, but we have our own limits.
Yeah, maybe I just adding
And
one
then
small
we have
thing.
2 more questions.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. So I'm not supporting like don't give payment to people. Everyone should get proper paid and so on. But I just want to mention, actually, in Mekong Culture Hub, we do have the really brilliant advisor. They just because they share our value, they really want to contribute their knowledge, their wisdom. And so on. So I feel maybe that's also one way we can look for people who actually they have a capacity to support you if you just call for help and identify why this matter to you. I'm super optimistic. That's what people describing me. But I think it really works. If you really care, I think you care. I can tell you care. Sorry, I say you care. But what you need, why this is so matter, you don't want to give up and share with more people. There are people standing by, they have a wisdom, whatever. They might like, oh, I share the value. Let me try to see what they could support you and work with you together. No one can be like, everything. And we are also small. We are so small, 3%.
Thank you very much. I'm going to close this question because we have 2 more questions. Please.
Great, thanks. Jelle Burger from Dutch Culture, the Netherlands. I'd like to go back to the title of this panel, Transitioning to the International Arts and Culture Ecosystem, Revisited Motivation and Challenges. Unfortunately, there are more and more challenges we see on a day-to-day basis, and it's impossible to discuss them all here. But I think the biggest challenge is climate change that will affect all of us, no matter where we are on the planet. And we cannot deny that working internationally and international collaboration goes together with traveling and also has an impact on the environment. And I was wondering if these are discussions that you have on a day-to-day basis in your organization. If you make different choices than you did, for example, 10 years ago, and also if you're working with new formats of international cultural cooperation.
Okay. I try first. It's a really important issue. Like I described, all the practitioners we work with, they have their strong concern for social issue. One very strong one is climate change, and we will also be aware of that. And so, in terms of getting regional level collaboration, the hybrid method I think is really helpful. So, and also, it's not like you don't travel at all, but when you travel, you really make the best use of the travel because you spend not only money, a lot of things like you mentioned about climate change, so it costs a lot. So you really want to cost a lot, you really need to prepare, really, it's a precious chance. So I mentioned our program have a small group and also longer time, because online is a bit like not so damage the environment in a way. So they really get prepared. They really know why they are here. Talking to the same group over 8 months. Why? Because you really care. This is really interesting, something you want to get out of this. And so they also have a chance to digest, coming back, and so on. So a lot of a benefit to having this previous stage, really using online, get ready. And everyone is so appreciate the chance. They will fly to somewhere for a week, for several days. And in a way, because we work regionally, so the flight is shorter. And it's like, I fly like 18 years. So I feel that's a way we try to look at this. If online, we can really work well, we try. If it doesn't work, and we learn, and we try to change. But so far, I want to share with you, I think it really worked well, particularly the longer process. And the time they work together, they really stay with each other. They don't have their laptop try to type email and try to, be there, but not really listen to the real person. They have a small group. They want to hang out from the beginning, eating breakfast together, join the session, and still eat and talk to each other. They hang out in the evening, and they, So I feel it's quite important, if we all fly together, we already damage it in a way, but that's making the damage a little bit better. So that's how we work, and I want to share with you. It really worked well, I think. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Adam, would you like to comment?
Sure. For us, the in-person meeting is crucial. So, this is something which won't be changed. It's really important for the PQ, for the people in every 4 years to meet at the one place. But of course, we prioritize. For example, if we are the ones who are covering the travel costs for the guest or participant, of course we prioritize the ground public transport, but not exclusively. For example, if there is a person who is traveling, and if it's more than, less than 700-800 kilometers, we prioritize that. But for example, there is a speaker who is coming for 2 days, from the distance of, I don't know, 700 kilometers. And if we would be like forcing this person to use the ground public transport, and he's coming for 2 days, it means 2 days extra for him or her to travel, which could mean like 2 extra days out of work. For example, that person needs to find somebody who will take care of his child. So I think it can't be applied across the board, but of course we prioritize this kind of travel if it's possible and if it's reasonable. With us and sustainability, it's a big issue because there is so many exhibitions coming to Prague, and some of them they're really huge, like more than 5 to 5 meters for each country, for example, and there is a huge risk that there will be a lot of waste left of that exhibition. But again, the important thing, which I didn't mention before, that each country is covering all the cost concerning this exhibition. So we're gonna try our best to discuss with the curator the ways of how to make it more green, more sustainable, to use dismantling type of construction, for example. But we can't force anybody because they are paying for it. We're gonna work on some kind of like organizational manual where we gonna express our wish to make it as sustainable as possible, or at least from the materials. If they are not bringing it back, at least make it from the materials which can be recycled or upcycled. We will be also working. We already did work with organizations in Czech Republic who can distribute those kind of materials, preferably to the cultural sector. For example, there's an organization called Art Reuse, which we cooperated on PQ 2023, who took the material, metal, wood, and distributed among like the theaters in Prague. So this is another way. And new way of thinking about those exhibitions is like, which we called like a second life, to motivate the exhibitors, the curators, to think about their exhibition as not something which will be placed for 10 days in Prague, but think about it as a something which can move on. For example, we have really good experience with Portugal or with Brazil, for example. They tour with their exhibition in their own country, but it requires another funding, for example. But to think about the exhibition that it can last, it's not just like a temporary thing. But it will be difficult, of course. I think we, as organizers of PQ, we are kind of responsible. We already like forbid the one-time used paper or plastic dishes, stuff like that. If we are building something, we are building it from the materials which can be dismantled and used again, for example. So I think, like, of course, we can do more. But the exhibitions are the main issues regarding sustainability. We are aware of that. We will try our best, but it's a huge event. There will be always some CO2, how to call it, like waste left after us.
Thank you very much. We do have a very last question, and then we will be closing this conversation. Short answers, please.
Yes, short, I promise. Thank you for a very insightful session. My name is Neosha. I'm an artist, and I also work with cultural development within the Swedish administration, where bridging these like bureaucracy with grassroots organizations is essential. Really, we're bridging two different worlds, and the way we work is also looking at it as a mentorship program for us. We learn so much from the partners. So I just would love to hear a bit from you two, what you've gathered from the partners throughout the years and throughout the regions. And so just like one punchline each if you have. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's
And
more like
short answers, please, because we're
like
running
a
out of time.
partner organization or practitioner?
The different type of partnerships that you've had in the
Okay.
regions.
So maybe I share quickly because what we target and we really understanding actually there are really good partner. They really coming from development sector, human rights sector, social sector. Actually, we have a shared value. And so we are interested to really have a build up more chance to collaborate and to finding out a new way we can work together, really bridging the artists can work with development sector together, finding new way, and we really want to play the role. And so what we really learn from there is like even partnership between organizations is a really huge, challenging things that we really need to invest a lot. So that's something really our learning, and we are still trying to learn. And another thing is like, I really agree what you're saying, when you really pay attention to the people you work with, you learn from them. I learned so much, we learn so much from the practitioner. We know why they are, can be so strong and working on that and so on. So I think investing time, no matter it's an individual or organization, you just need to look at them as an individual. You don't look at them like a practitioner, organization, not this way. I think that's the biggest learning I really got from the work. You really need to look at the people and hear what they're trying to say and something, the behind message of what they try to say. And we can, in the middle, try to play the role to support. Yeah, I try to be quick.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And Adam, you have the very 2 words.
No.
No, time is out. So, sorry. Thank you very much, Jennifer and Adam, for this very nice and exciting conversation. Thank you very much to the audience. And please, Johan, please conclude today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you to Maya, thank you to Jennifer, thank you to Adam for your discussion, contribution. One of my personal takeaway, is that I should run the title of the panels with many people before proposing them, because I felt the word transition was kind of triggering a lot of reactions, which is, super interesting. Thank you very much for this. You can go and relax.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So, again, a big thank you to the panelists of our 2 panel discussions. So the forum is not over, as you know. It will continue tomorrow at 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock Eastern European time. We will gather again and start at 9 here in this, under this wonderful cupola, and online with our online participants. I want to thank all the technicians that were with us today, including the live captioners that were, making great efforts to follow the entire conversation of today. And I want again to thank the team that is hosting us at Rigasec. It is a very, earlier Maya was telling how emotional it was for her to come back to On the Move, and I want to share how emotional it is for me to be in this space, as I contributed to the strategy of this space and the architecture contest of this space. So it's a nice feeling to see how beautiful it has become. So thank you all of you for today, and see you tomorrow.